70,000 people that have felt that nudge from God to go on a trip or do something meaningful around the world to play a part in advancing his kingdom and playing a part in that mission. And then we think about all those people, they go to places and the numbers of people that each of those 70,000 people are serving and engaging with. I mean, it's remarkable. It's overwhelming for our team to think about the impact of that. And again, as Logan said, that we get to play a small part in that and be able to support them in that work is just inspiring for us.
When Jesus issues the Great Commission, as they call it, at the end of Matthew, he sends people all the way to the ends of the earth with his good news. And there's a literal thing that's still happening in the world today to take missionaries all over the world to do the work of the church. But when every missionary travels, there's insurance risks that go with them. And so today we're going to talk about how to plan and execute a well-covered mission trip. And we're going to be talking with Tyler Ward, who is the sales manager from Brotherhood Works, and Logan Kruse, the specialty sales lead from the global mission team, about exactly that. How can you execute a great mission trip for your ministry? Let's get right into that conversation. All right, well, it is my pleasure to be joined today by Tyler Ward, sales manager with Brotherhood Works, and Logan Kruse, specialty sales lead of global mission. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Excited to be here.
Yes, indeed.
Thanks, Adam. Excited to be able to chat with you today.
Yeah, of course. So we'll dive right into our topic, which is mission travel insurance. Can you guys kind of tell me and anybody listening today, what is mission travel insurance and how does it differ from a typical insurance policy?
It's a great question, and I think it pretty much goes back to the start of when our team was created and when Brotherhood's idea of having travel insurance started. As the story goes, it was about 20 years ago. Brotherhood had a pastor that was traveling, and he was on the Amazon River. And he had a medical event, needed to be medically evacuated. He called his Brotherhood agent, who then in turn called Brotherhood and asked, are we covered or do we have coverage? Brotherhood's executive team was actually meeting that day. They canceled the rest of their agenda, and they decided the rest of the day was going to be devoted to how can we address this need? And with that, created our global mission team and Brotherhood's desire to offer some form of travel insurance. So I think that's kind of a helpful foundation to understand from day one, everything that Brotherhood has built out through our global mission team, through our travel insurance, has been with the sole focus of mission travel, faith-based tours, faith-based conferences, and how we can best serve the church, serve the mission pastor, the trip leader sending out that team. And I think with that, there's a few things that we do a little differently than maybe the standard travel insurance that kind of separates us. The first of which would be our website, faithventures.com. We look at it as a one-stop shop for all things mission travel. So obviously we've got Faith Ventures travel insurance on there, but in addition to that, we've got a partnership with AFC Travel, who helps with booking flights. We have a partnership with Go Method, who helps with trip management when it comes to tracking where people are at with raising funds for their trip. Then we also have just additional trip resources on the website, like liability waivers, real-time information of security events going on in country. Again, just a one-stop shop for mission pastors, trip leaders to go to help organize all things mission travel. So I think that's the biggest thing of how we separate ourselves, is providing those additional resources. And then I think when it comes to like the purchase process, we make it as easy as possible. The only information you need is the first and last name of the traveler, where a lot of the standard travel insurance, you're just required to collect a lot more information. We know that trip leaders, mission pastors are juggling a million different things as they're planning these trips. So we want our travel insurance that we're offering to be super straightforward. And then the last thing is just our cost structure. The price for Faith Ventures is the same price for everyone. So regardless of your age, regardless of your health, regardless of where you're going, you're paying the same costs, which this is a huge benefit for pastors or trip leaders or churches. As they're planning for their trips, they know exactly what to factor into that budget. A lot of the standard travel insurance is priced differently based off your age and things like that. So those are kind of some of the highlights of how we separate ourselves from standard travel insurance.
That's a very, very helpful overview. And maybe you can kind of take it a step further. based on the people that are listening to this are ministry leaders and people who might be sending people on behalf of a faith-based organization. So why is mission travel insurance uniquely important to that group of people?
Yep, that's a great question. And I think it comes back to if you're a church or a ministry sending out a team, with that, there comes a level of responsibility and duty to help make sure that you're taking care of your individuals that are entrusting you. Whether it's a parent trusting you with sending their child on an international trip, or even an adult volunteer trusting you to handle those small details and think through what could go wrong and how they're covered. There is a level of responsibility that comes along with that. So I think with our price structure and the way we keep our plans relatively inexpensive is it's easy to factor into your budget and have that peace of mind and know that with that responsibility, there's ways to mitigate some of that risk, and have that coverage for if something goes wrong.
So, as you're talking with ministries about their mission travel insurance needs, are there any common misconceptions about what the need actually is? Because the wrong time to find that one out is when you're overseas actually doing mission work and you have the need for that insurance.
100%. Yeah. As we meet with churches and ministries, we do hear some of those common misconceptions. One of which is just we've never had any issues in the past. And I think, well, that could be a valid reason potentially. We look at like last year, we had a claim that was $300,000 for a medical evacuation. And we think, I highly doubt that person expected to have an event like that when they were
Right.
traveling overseas, but I'm sure they're glad they had coverage in place. If they didn't, I mean, $300,000 can financially devastating in addition to going through whatever medical event they were. We want to prevent that. So we don't want churches to think, well, we haven't had any issues, prevent them from having coverage if an issue like that ever did come into play. The second thing that we hear a decent amount is that medical expenses are relatively inexpensive overseas. And while that may be the case sometimes in some countries for minor medical conditions, again, it goes back to don't let that prevent you from purchasing the travel insurance for those significant medical events that could happen, whether it's paying for an ambulance ride or being medically evacuated by a helicopter. Those big events can happen, and there's a lot of expenses associated with that. So again, we don't want those minor or sometimes inexpensive things to prevent you from having coverage for those big events.
That's very good. And are there specific coverages or coverage triggers then for a mission travel insurance policy, maybe even that apply uniquely to faith-based organizations, but that you could help people understand these are the situations we're talking about when we're talking about mission travel insurance?
Yep. So I would say like Faith Ventures and travel insurance as a whole, there's kind of like four core coverages that we look at of really the purpose and heart behind why you purchase travel insurance. The first of which, as we touched on earlier, is medical evacuation. So that would be if you have a traveler, they're sick or injured and need to be evacuated to the nearest facility that can properly treat them. Super important coverage to have, super expensive, what that expense is to be medically evacuated. And I think it comes along with the territory of where people are going for mission trips. A lot of the times it's third countries that don't have good hospitals or good ways to be treated. And if you have an event, you're going to want to be medically evacuated to the nearest facility again that can properly treat you. So that's the first core coverage. The second is like medical and illness expense coverage. So people don't oftentimes, or they oftentimes overlook that like 99% of the time when you're traveling internationally, if you have a medical event, your U.S. health insurance isn't going to cover you. So there's that gap there, and that's an important coverage to have in place while you're traveling internationally. The third piece is security evacuation. So that would be the U.S. government or the country you're in's government says that all U.S. citizens need to evacuate. There's coverage built in there for that, as well as access to a crisis response team that's going to help you navigate that situation. So again, another super important coverage to consider as you're sending teams. And then the fourth core coverage is repatriation of remains. So what that is if someone were to pass away on a trip, navigating how do we get their body back? How do we transport them back to their home? Different things you never want to think about, but again, an important coverage to have. And then in addition to that, there's some just miscellaneous travel insurance items like misconnection, baggage loss, baggage delay. Again, nice coverages to have in place, but usually minor in comparison to those four core coverages.
Oh, that's really helpful. And, much of what we talk about when we're talking about insurance on this podcast is preparing for the worst case scenario. And I don't want to say that a stateside worst case scenario is not bad enough, but when you have something that's happening and you're out of reach, you're physically unable to be kind of boots on the ground and helpful to the situation, having an insurance policy that does work that you can't possibly do because the need is so remote. That I mean,
Yep.
when you were listing those, I'm like, man, those are some bleak
Yep.
outlooks. You really need
Yep.
help, and mission travel insurance steps in when you need it most. That's really, really good. Now, let me ask a question about. Oftentimes, people are sending mission teams where the needs are the greatest. So you
Yep.
might have something like high risk areas or places where a travel advisory might even take place. Wh- what happens there with a mission travel insurance
Yep.
policy? Does it work any differently?
Yeah, it's a great question and one we deal with every day. As you mentioned, people go to the unreached, and a lot of times those are in some dangerous areas of the world. So I would say in general, travel insurance as a whole and Faith Ventures is required to follow OFAC sanctions. And what an OFAC sanction is that's an economic sanction that the United States government has placed either on a country or a people group or person within a country that says all U.S. Businesses are not legally allowed to work with that organization or that country. So we do follow the OFAC sanctions. And then in terms of the travel advisories that the U.S. State Department gives out, there's four levels to that. The fourth being basically the U.S. State Department saying you shouldn't travel to this country. So if the U.S. State Department has declared you shouldn't travel and you enter into that country, as it's a level 4 travel advisory, the security evacuation would be excluded from coverage. Again, if it's a level 4 as you enter into the that country. We do have, separate from travel insurance, a kidnap and ransom slash security policy that we can sometimes get around that level 4 travel advisory for something like security evacuation. But in terms of Faith Ventures and travel insurance, that's how one, the U.S. State Department travel advisories, and then the OFAC sanctions can come into play.
Let's get my boy Tyler Ward back involved in this conversation. You've been very patient with me and Logan go through in some particulars, but let's talk about some real life, real world scenarios where mission travel has had to play its part. Can you talk about how this is maybe applied for some ministries or schools, even who have sent people and needed to use their insurance coverage?
For sure. Yeah. I think one of the reasons I'm so passionate about Faith Ventures is before I ever came to Brotherhood to be a part of the global mission team, I actually used Faith Ventures as a pastor. I was serving as a local church pastor for 20 years. And I didn't think about insurance that often, to be honest, in my role. I was worried about discipleship and engaging people in God's mission. But I was thankful to have that in place. And even more so now that I work in this world, realizing all the benefit that can bring. But a few examples come to mind for me when I think of how it's benefited people. One's a very personal one. A trip that I led shortly after coming to Brotherhood was a tour group that I was responsible for and led on a tour in Israel. And we had a group of about 45 of us. Again, my focus on the trip was trying to help them experience all that God had for them on the trip. And we had purchased Faith Ventures. We had also purchased trip cancellation coverage, which is an add-on to our plans. And a few days before we went on the trip, we had a lady in our group that she had been. This is a bucket list situation. She wanted to go to Israel. She wanted to walk where Jesus walked. And a few days before, she ended up with a health condition. Actually, her retina detached from her eye, and she had to go into immediate surgery. And obviously, she wasn't able to go on the trip. She wasn't going to be flying anywhere anytime soon. And as I kind of put my pastor hat back on with her, I was disappointed for her. She wasn't going to be able to go on the trip. Of course, disappointed that she was walking through what she was physically. But I was also kind of regretting having to say to her, you know what, at this point, everything you've paid in this $4,000 to $5,000 trip is non-refundable. We're just days before we go. Because we had the trip cancellation coverage in place, though, and her situation was a covered expense, she was able to be reimbursed for that. And I remember being so thankful that as a pastor in her life in that moment, that I got to go to her and say, I'm really sorry for all you're walking through, but because we had this in place, we're able to at least help you recover and recoup what you paid for the trip and aren't able to go and experience. And so That was a great moment for me on the front end of my time here, just being able to celebrate a win and see Faith Ventures work the way that it should. Of course, on our team and the conversations we have, we hear stories all the time of ways that it's able to benefit people. I talked with a guy at a conference a few months ago that he was on a mission trip in a remote part of Africa and actually got in an accident, broke both of his legs, and he couldn't receive the care he desperately needed where he was at, and he had to take a helicopter ride to the nearest location where he could receive that care. And thankfully, he was well taken care of. But at the end of the day, the cost of that helicopter ride was about $65,000. And because he had Faith Ventures, he didn't have to pay any of that out of pocket. And I know not only for him was he thankful, but his church was thankful because of their responsibility and duty of care for him. But he was thankful personally. And I think it was just a great example, again, of how Faith Ventures can come up huge and be a game changer for people when they're trying to follow God's lead, serve him in hard places in the world, and something unexpected like that happens.
Logan, I don't want to cut you off if you've got any unexpected situations you've encountered since being in this work that might be helpful for people to illuminate, like, oh, wow, that could happen to me. If it can happen to them, it could happen to me.
Yeah, I think I go back to that original example I gave earlier of the $300,000 medical evacuation. That was a pastor that was on a trip in Cambodia, had a medical event. It cost $300,000 to get them to the nearest facility. In addition to, I think it was like $40,000 of medical expenses that were paid out to that individual. And I think goes to show nobody expects an event like that to happen. But that shows the importance of having travel insurance and having Faith Ventures so that if something like that were to happen, um, you're worrying about those medical things, those medical events that are taking place, and the financial burden of that's taken care of through Faith Ventures.
That is heartbreaking and hopeful all at the same time. Those are good stories to hear that there is help out there for the worst case scenarios, especially when people are just wanting to opt in to the mission of the church, to the mission that God is on all over the world. That's a good thing. And we want people to feel like they can do that with confidence. And so I'm really thankful to hear those stories. Let's talk process for a second. Let's get right into the logistics of this. As a church or school or nonprofit is planning a trip, when in that process should they be considering insurance?
Yeah, I think in terms of planning for it, I would say from day one, as you're putting together your budget, I would just factor in the cost of one of the Faith Ventures plans that makes sense to purchase for your travelers. And as you promote the trip, cost, you already have that expense built in. So in terms of planning, I would say from day one. In terms of purchasing, I would say once you have your group list of who's going on the trip, that's usually the best time to purchase the Faith Ventures plan. Again, the purchase process is super easy where you only need their names to purchase the plans. And then it's pretty flexible in terms of if you have somebody that ends up not going on the trip or someone takes their place, as long as the plan hasn't started, typically you can cancel the plan and get a refund or swap that name out for somebody else if they're taking their spot. You can purchase up until 24 hours before you leave. We obviously don't recommend it, but if you do forget or something slips through the cracks or somebody else jumps on the trip at the last second, you have up until 24 hours before you leave to do that.
Now, do those cards, those policies apply to just short trips that are like a week long, or are they something that extends beyond a, short-term mission trip that would be most typical, like on a summer or something like that?
Yep. Great question. So Faith Ventures has two different types of plans. We have short-term plans, which is trips that are less than 6 months at a time. So that could be a week trip, couple day trip. It could be 3 months. But once you get to that 6 month mark, we have long-term plans that we offer for someone who's more so going to live overseas for more than 6 months or for a year at a time. So we do have two different ways that we cover that. In addition to our global mission team, if organizations are sending out missionaries or things like that, we have some separate products that we offer for those long-term missionaries. But the Faith Ventures short-term, again, is less than 6 months.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great barometer for churches to understand. So I know that COVID completely changed everything. there's nothing it didn't touch, but travel was something that it touched immediately and for a long time. And so I know, between 2020 and maybe 2022, it was pretty quiet on the mission travel front. It shut things down. But, I understand we're back. A lot of churches are back to traveling, back to sending people. But what trends are you guys seeing? I know that's pretty generic, but is that kind of the story, or are there different trends you're paying attention to?
Yeah, I think that's a great point that I think it's back fully up and running. I mean, we're hitting record number in terms of people purchasing our plans. So churches are definitely sending teams out. And I think just the awareness of travel insurance and how important it can be was definitely elevated during COVID time for things like what if I'm quarantined when I'm on my trip and my trip's extended? What about those costs for that additional hotel room and food and things like that? So I think in terms of the numbers that we're seeing, and talking with our flight partners, AFC Travel, we're at record numbers in terms of people going around the world to serve the kingdom.
I think Logan did a great job addressing a lot of that. Most of the things that we monitor as a team have less to do with health concerns and pandemics right now, more to do with security situations. I mentioned a story earlier of taking a team to tour Israel. That was a big part of what we covered with Faith Ventures for many years, and that's been impacted recently because of a lot of the stuff happening on more on a security basis in the Middle East and different parts of the world. So we try to monitor that. Honestly, I think that's one of the values that our team brings to this whole space is that you can buy travel insurance, from a lot of different places, but you have with us and with Faith Ventures a dedicated team of people that understand ministry and missions and mission work, who engage in it ourselves and with our churches, but also are keeping an eye out of the trends and things that are happening around the world, so we can provide the best kind of feedback and guidance and insight for the people that we're insuring and the people that we're serving.
I love that. That is what a resource this team is to churches who have very reasonable questions in this area. There's a lot of mystery here. So let's say someone's listening to this podcast today and they are interested in starting the process for the very first time of planning a mission trip. What are some first steps you might give them to make sure that they step into this wisely?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the first thing would just be to understand the risk that are involved with sending a team. And then don't let that prevent you from sending the team out. There's ways to help mitigate that risk. Travel insurance that can walk alongside you to give you some peace of mind when it comes to those things. And then another huge aspect of that is I would highly recommend you reach out to your Lightwell agent. There's a lot of things on the Brotherhood Mutual policy that can go hand in hand with what we're doing with Faith Ventures and kidnap and ransom policies. Ultimately, they don't know what you don't inform them of. So I would be sure that you let them know we have short-term trips we're sending out, or we have long-term individuals that we're sending overseas, and they can partner with you and with our team to make sure that all those gaps are filled in, all the endorsements are added to your Brotherhood policy. So definitely your Lightwell agent's a tremendous resource when you're starting out that thought process.
Again, when I think about leading teams and engaging in that role, we know that when people are taking a mission trip or taking a team somewhere in the world to do meaningful and important work in that way, you want to be the expert in the things that you're the expert in discipleship, helping people experience all that God has for you. What you don't want to have to try to be is the expert when it comes to where do we go to receive medical care, or how do we take good care of this person when something unexpected happens. And that's what we want our Faith Ventures team and the partners that we partner with to take care of people around the world, as well as the Lightwell agents that are working with churches and ministries. We want to take that burden so you can focus on the things that God has called you to and that you're truly the expert at.
That's excellent. Okay, and Logan, you may have said this may be built into that answer you just gave, but when a ministry is working with their insurance agent, if it's a Lightwell Insurance Advisor or anybody else, when they're working with them, what are the ways that they can most effectively utilize that relationship to make sure their needs are covered?
Yeah, I would say lean on that relationship. I mean, they're the insurance experts. They work with our team. All we do every day is work with people sending out trips or sending out individuals or large mission sending organizations and churches around the United States. So I'd say lean on that expertise, lean on the guidance of your Lightwell agent. Sending teams can be stressful, and there's a lot of things you're juggling. Our job, your Lightwell agent's job, is to alleviate the stress of thinking through the travel insurance side. So I'd say lean on that relationship you have, trust their guidance and trust their expertise.
So as we wrap up, I know we're kind of getting close to time here. Let's finish with Logan, why are you in this work? What exactly is it that you are called to? As mission travel is often for people a calling, something that they feel stirred to do. They want to participate with what God is up to all over the world. How do you feel about your role in that?
Yeah, it's an amazing thing that we get to do. I think the stories that we get to hear, the ministries that we get to talk to every day and learn about the impact they're having all around the world to advance the kingdom. It's an honor for our team to even play a small part in that when it comes to travel insurance. And I think, again, that's the reason I come in every day and have a smile on my face and get to talk to the people I talk to, is, again, just to make sure that they're able to continue to do the things they've been called to do, and just alleviate some of that insurance side of things.
The only thing I would add to that, and I think it's something we remind ourselves as a team often of, is this year we're going to insure about 70,000 travelers through Faith Ventures. And when we think about that, for us, it's more than policy counts and things like that. It's 70,000 people that have felt that nudge from God to go on a trip or do something meaningful around the world to play a part in advancing his kingdom and playing a part in that mission. And then we think about all those people, they go to places and the numbers of people that each of those 70,000 people are serving and engaging with. I mean, it's remarkable. It's overwhelming for our team to think about the impact of that. And again, as Logan said, that we get to play a small part in that, and be able to support them in that work is just inspiring for us.
That's fantastic. That's a perfect way to finish. Thank you both for your heart for this and for seeing the multiplicative impact of people who are on mission and what it can do to advance the kingdom around the world, and for being there in the background, hopefully where nobody can see you, ready to protect and to help whenever you are needed. So Tyler Ward, sales manager from Brotherhood Works, and Logan Kruse, specialty sales lead from the global mission team there at Brotherhood Mutual. Thank you both so much for your time today and the work that you're doing.
Thanks,
Adam.
My thanks once again to Tyler and Logan for their time and their expertise and how they are serving ministries as they take mission trips all over the world. If you're a mission sending organization or a ministry leader preparing for a mission trip and you've listened to this podcast today, you already know how complicated it is to execute a good mission trip. My only encouragement, my only takeaway from today is don't go it alone. Find someone who can be a resource to you in this area. And if it feels right to do so, start with lightwell.com and find an insurance advisor in your area, and they can help you take next steps in the right direction. So until the next episode of the podcast, let's go and let it shine.